Now, we have a guest in the studio. He's Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa. He's the Executive Director of Usawa Agenda. Dr. Manyasa, karibu to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
That is the hot seat that you occupy, but we will have some grace today because we've just crossed over into April from March. We've been stuck in that. Now it was becoming a bit of a problem.
I think the good doctor is going to be wondering why it is we were stuck in March and why we haven't perhaps
even got into May. Yeah, I will explain to him.
You know, the promises were made in this country in the month of March, earth-moving, life-changing promises. One was that, well, not really. March was the date on which these promises were supposed to be fulfilled. One of them was the reduction of the prices, the cost of electricity. Yes. We got 15% the year before, but it was supposed to be 30. Then we were told March. So we said, okay. But around that same time, there's this lovely expressway that has very many names, but it's the expressway. We were told that this particular expressway would be completed and would be inaugurated by the president that same month. So we said, hooray, March isn't too far away. At least in January it wasn't. Now we're in June, March is really far away, but it's behind. So because our time set was based on the premises of these two promises, and they were in March, we're stuck in March.
I am actually stuck in 2000.
Okay. What happened in 2000?
Because we were supposed to have piped water to every household by the year 2000. And yesterday I had a promise of water to every household. So
By
we
the
are still
year
in 2000.
That is a never-ending promise. It is called sustainable goal. Sustain the goal. Not
You do the sustaining.
Not achieve the goal.
Not achieve
Sustain
the
the
goal.
goal.
No. It's a sustainable goal. Dr. Manyasa, thank you very much for joining us. What is the Usawa Agenda?
Thank you. Usawa Agenda is a not-for-profit organization that works in education in Kenya. We do research and advocacy, and we do research and community engagement. So we research on learning levels, on drivers of learning levels, and we engage with the relevant stakeholders around that, the stakeholders being government, communities, parents, teachers, and yourselves as the fourth estate.
You know, Usawa then would imply that you're looking at equality and inequality. Is that so?
Yes, we are very much interested on the issues of inequity in education because we think that that is where inequities in society are planted. Because once the education system is inequitable, then there is no chance that there will be equity in society.
And how are we faring?
Not so good.
How so? Could you explain how we are not doing so well? How Kenya is not doing so well then in this whole inequity conversation than when it comes to education? How? Why?
I want us to look at secondary schools in particular for today.
Okay.
And I will explain to you why there is a lot of inequity in our secondary school system. Because we have categorized schools into sub-county, county, extra-county, and national.
Yes.
And if you take 4 children who have scored 400 marks or 300 marks each, and you take one to a sub-county school, another to a county school, another to extra-county, and another to a national school, they will emerge with different grades in Form 4. And Form 4 grade, and this is very important to note, Form 4 grade is the most consequential grade that anyone ever scores in this country. You can flunk in your university exam, you will go to another university and enroll in a different degree program and just graduate and forget that you are ever enrolled in this other. But if you fail in your Form 4, it will follow you everywhere. For example, we have children in this country or young people who have not scored the required C+ to join university in the first instance. And then they have gone through diploma and they have gone through levels and ended up with a degree or even a master's. You cannot serve, you cannot enter our military as a cadet if you did not get a C+.
It doesn't matter how many
degrees you acquire along the way. And yet someone with a B+ straight from Form 4 can join the military as a cadet. You can't join with your degrees if you didn't score a C+ in Form 4. If you didn't score a C+ in Form 4 and you went to a TTC and you trained as a teacher and later upgraded to degree and even masters, you cannot teach in a secondary school. You'll never be promoted to teach in secondary school if
because
you didn't have a C+.
KCSE
Because your
indicates-
KCSE was not C+.
Wow.
That is how consequential KCSE examinations are. That they follow you everywhere.
Now, take a step back. You said that if you got pupils who score 400 in KCPE across the country,
Or
right?
300.
300.
We take 300?
Let's take 300.
Let's take the geniuses. 400.
Okay.
Huh?
All right.
And then you decide that you don't have school fees. You're going to a sub-county day school.
Okay. I'll go
You
happily.
have a bit of school fees, but you can't afford it. You're going to a county. You are going to extra county. You, congratulations, you go to the national school.
National school.
You're saying at the end of the 4 years, they are going to most likely get different scores.
They will emerge from secondary school with different scores.
Why?
Attending, let me just give you some of the findings we have here. If you attended a national school, if you attend a national school, you're going to score on average 5.4 points higher than someone else who attended a sub-county school who joined with the same entry marks. That is...
You know, we are going to ask you why.
Yeah.
Yes,
What
but-
factors
Yeah, you
determine
will
this?
ask me, and I have them here. I brought them.
So why?
So that is that is the case, and you can see why. National schools, 80% of the teachers in national schools are TSC teachers. 67% of teachers in sub-county schools are TSC teachers. The rest are employed by boards of management, and these are people who are underpaid, who don't have security of tenure, who are therefore least motivated and mostly inexperienced. If you look at the intern teacher that the government has employed, national schools have only 2.7% of their teachers being interns. Sub-county schools have 7.5% of their teachers being interns. What does that tell you? Sub-county schools, besides having fewer teachers than they need, they also have the least experienced teachers. And they have the least experienced managers. National schools, on average, principals in national schools have been principals for at least 12 years. 54% of them have been principals for at least 12 years. Most of the principals in the sub-county schools are the inexperienced principals, the ones who have served 1 to 3
Those are the ones who are
as
starting.
principals, the ones who are starting to be principals.
Right.
So these schools we have the least experienced teachers, the least
Motivated
teachers, and managed by the least experienced managers.
Facilities?
Facility-wise, 87.7% of national schools have libraries. Just about 20% of sub-county schools have libraries.
When you talk about the numbers, are you looking at the current number of national schools? We have
Yes.
over 100 national
The-
schools,
the-
not the 27 of Kitambo.
I'm looking at the 100 national schools. This is data from last year, July. And so we're looking at the current numbers. When you look at the resources that these schools get from government, an average national school has 1,200 students minimum, times the 22,000 that they receive per student. Roughly how much is that? An average sub-county school has just below 400 students. So you multiply that again by the 22,000. So the capitation model as it is inequitable. It favors the big schools and not the small schools. Because once you have children in school, there are certain things that are basic. They all need, whether they are 10 or they are 1,000. And some of those basic things are the libraries we're talking about. You need a library in school, whether you have 10 students or you have 1,000. But the money is based on the numbers. The capitation is purely based on the numbers, and that is a problem. We need to have some basic minimum that is given to every school, and then some variable amount that now depends on the numbers of the students.
Do you see this then affecting then your populations of learners then that are going to schools? And I'll explain that a little bit more. Having a conversation a few weeks ago when we said, why is it that you have X number then of national schools, just as an example, if we're looking at that as, you know, where everybody wants to go. You have X number of national schools, but then you have a higher percentage in terms of numbers of students applying to just 10 of these national schools in the country. With what you're saying, then would you guarantee that you have more students going across the country to all the schools, regardless of, you know, what their name may have been or what kind of reputation they have accumulated over years? With this formula that you're talking about, then would you guarantee that all schools at the national level, for example, would be at par?
You know, for the last about 7 years, we've had what the government has been calling the National Schools Upgrading Program. And even in this year's budget, there is 370 million set aside for that. And I don't understand, because for me, we need a sub-county school upgrading program so that we start to narrow the gap between the quality of a sub-county school and the quality of a national school. Because today we don't really have a standard of what is a secondary school. Because a secondary school will range from Nairobi school with 1,000 acres of land and children eating eggs in school to another structure somewhere that is smaller by far than this one corridor to the end. Just a few, 2-3 classrooms. The teachers don't have a staff room where they can sit and attend to students. And we still call it a secondary school. So we need a sub-county school upgrading program to start to put resources there to make them worthy of the name school. And then put the teachers there, because there are no teachers in those schools. And there is some part of it which is part of faultiness in the law. If you look at the TSC Act, the TSC Act mandates TSC to provide the headship of a school when a school is set up. So if today you go to your village and the people there tell you, now you can help us set up a school, you'll be the chairman of a board of management, and you set up a school, TSC will give you the head. And they have met the requirements of the TSC Act by doing so. Where you get the other teachers is your business. They will tell you, we will give you more teachers when they become available. And they want to become available. So
Emmanuel, why won't they become available?
Because the government has had limited budget for a very long time. So for a very long time, government replaces teachers who are retiring and who are leaving the service to do other.
In essence, you're saying the government doesn't really employ new teachers.
It replaces.
Very minimal. They majorly are replacing teachers who are leaving the service through retirement, through death, through disciplinary processes. And that's why a lot of schools, if you ask anyone who runs any public school in the country, they'll tell you they have teacher shortage. And every year they send to TSC, they say we lack an English teacher, we lack a maths teacher, we lack. When recruitment opportunities come, they are told you have an opportunity to recruit one teacher.
Let me ask about best practice, because you've done very well, Emmanuel, in just showing us the inequity from sub-county to county to extra county to national school in terms of quality, the numbers of teachers, the amenities available in the schools. The question is, why do we categorize the schools?
I don't understand. It's not within our laws. I think it's a colonial relic.
Is there colonial, not colonial, is there a global best practice? Are there other jurisdictions where schools are secondary schools are categorized?
I don't know of any. I think we may have borrowed this from the British, but I don't even think that it still works there.
Okay.
It is something that was there before. They believed there were children who are more talented and they needed to be put in institutions where they can be able to explore their talents more. But today we are in a different era. We are in the SDGs era, where we are saying we have committed as a country to pursue SDG 4, to give every child a chance, an equal chance to thrive through education. But now we are not giving them equal opportunities at all when you look at the schools we take them.
So you've given us the academic and, that answer. Now let's talk about the reality, the realistic answer, because this is not a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
Before they were called extra counties were called provincial and district schools and national
and
schools.
Harambee schools.
And Harambee schools, which are now the day school sub-county. There was a reason. Or at least even then, there was some thinking of why a school is at a certain category and a certain level. What was it?
And we can just go back to a very recent history when there was this clamor to create more national schools and saying creating more national schools will actually enable more children to go to national schools. And the logic is very faulty. Why the logic faulty? Because they are saying national schools will admit children from all over the country. They'll allow children to mix and therefore to develop some ethnic cohesion.
National cohesion.
They call it national cohesion, but it's basically ethnic cohesion, trying to say bring one from there and here and let them live together. But what stops us from mixing these children in any other school?
Capacity.
Which capacity? Why can't we build capacity in those schools? And basically that is what I'm saying. We need to upgrade our sub-county schools to a level where they have facilities that will enable children from all over the country to learn there. They don't have to be village schools where you say, now this one, its capacity is for only those who can walk from here.
Walk to school.
And so those ones don't need to be part of the national cohesion.
No. I completely see the issues and the questions that you're raising, because they've been asked many times before. I'm just trying to understand what was it that we were trying to address. I think if we just look back at the reality of the development of the country, all right? So the day Harambee schools, communities coming together and putting up a school, they have limited capacity in what they can do. And then the government says, so I'm going to bring in the teachers. And then the community is saying, we want our children to be able to go to the school. Now, there are several other things. We are not able to build this Harambee school into a boarding school, because boarding school means a certain cost of even taking the children to the school, because we cannot afford it as a community to take our children to a boarding school. So let's make it a day school and they can be coming home. There's logic. Then in the 60s, okay, there was that logic. And then there was, so we have a district school. So those ones who are then able, we shall find ways in which the community and the government shall support them to go to a district school, to a provincial school, to a national school. And then we're looking at, so who then goes to the national school? Let's use performance.
My question is this: what stops the government from investing in Onjiko Secondary School sufficiently enough to make it an equivalent of Alliance, so that every child, when they go to school, they have an equal chance that they will learn? Let me point out some other form of inequity that is there in these schools. If you go to most sub-county schools, you will find they teach 7 subjects. It's because of teacher shortage. And that is the minimum number of subjects that you end up sitting.
So essentially the choices available to the student is 7.
0. You have 7 subjects which you will have to do from Form 1
They're
to
all
Form 4.
compulsory.
They are all compulsory. When you come to some of these bigger schools, they offer up to 21 subjects. So that a learner at some point will have to find something they like.
4 languages.
There is music, there is power mechanics, there is drawing and design, there is
aviation.
Everything. So you will find something that you align to and which you can pursue as a career after high school. These are the learners who have gone to this school where you're told, this school, we offer agriculture as the examinable subject. So if you're good in music, if you're good in art and design,
You stand no chance.
you stand no chance. So are we giving these children equal opportunity?
Very, very pertinent questions that you're asking this morning. Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa is the Executive Director of Usawa Agenda. We are talking about inequality in Kenya's secondary school subsector and the impact that this is having on future generations. We've had this categorization of schools. We've really just been looking at it in terms of, its categorization of schools. But yeah, we all know when you say that you went to Onjiko Primary School and someone else comes and says, I went to St. Mary's. It's called St. Mary's Yala. They are different at East Kibari. East Kibari Secondary School. There's already a perception that is created in somebody's mind when they hear the school you went to. That perpetuates these inequalities.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We continue Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, broadcasting on SpiceFM, on KTN Home, on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Eric Latif. There's CT Muga Ndu Oko. Our guest is Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, the Executive Director of Usawa Agenda, talking about inequality in Kenya's secondary school subsector and the impact that this is having on future generations. CT.
You know, the picture that is being painted is a fairly gloomy one. You almost get the impression that there's very little that can be done to remedy it. Dr. In your opinion, what can we do to at least begin the process of remedying this situation?
A lot of things that we can do. It's not a lost cause. I'm sorry if my responses have given that impression. We just need a sub-county schools upgrading program. Stop pushing so much resources into the national schools that like we have been doing. Start with this 370 million that we want to still put in national schools and say, let us start upgrading sub-county schools. Let us make sure they have laboratories, they have libraries, and they have enough teachers. Because leaving the burden of hiring teachers to parents in sub-county schools, when we know that actually generally sub-county schools educate children from mostly poor households, is double jeopardy. So I think that we should start by making sure that in the next recruitment of teachers, we are deploying more teachers to sub-county schools.
But does the government have the capacity or ability to actually employ more teachers? I mean, because we have more teachers than we know what to do with.
The government has capacity if we put our minds in the right places.
Explain what you mean, please.
I think that if you look at the Ministry of Education, the way it's structured,
Yes.
and the Teacher Service Commission, the way it's structured, there are more officers there whose contribution to education is negligible. and we could actually do away with some of those officers and redirect those resources to recruiting teachers. So it's a matter of, government has put enough money in education, by the way.
It has.
Yes, I think so. Kenya is one of the countries that have put a lot of resources in education. The challenge is the efficiency and utilization of those resources and
So
targeting what is most important.
We are misdirecting the money.
Yeah.
What is it? What percentage is the budget for education? Is it 30%?
27%.
27% of what we budget every year goes to education. That's a lot of money.
It's the highest.
800 plus billion shillings
It's the
every
highest.
year.
So, Dr. Manyasa, even as you're looking at this now, when we're saying, okay, in terms of absorption, that happens. Absorption happens. But then we're saying efficiency and effectiveness of this funding. We have officers who needn't to be there. We have programs maybe are outdated or are not accurate in terms of how they should be applied. Now, if anybody on the outside looking in can figure out that there's a problem here, how much more than the practitioners of the system by the Ministry of Education, do they realize that there's an issue here? I'm sure you've had engagement with them. Do they realize that there's a problem?
A lot of practitioners within the ministry realize there is a problem. But when you're a small man or a small woman within the system, you don't really have so much leverage.
But many drops make the ocean, right?
They say where I come from, a court takes the shape of the wearer.
Right.
And in our structures, the way we govern this country, it is the top that makes decisions, and everyone else has to align. And that is a big problem.
There's a huge problem, and I think sometimes we look at it as a lot less than it should be. Education being a fundamental right of every child in this country, and where we've just come back from, just as an example of the current times in which we are at right now. So we look at the situation whereby the inequity that is rife from school to school around the country, from child to child, doesn't matter. But then we also look at the provisions that ought to be made for children. We are coming back in the Kenyan system, we are coming back after midterm right now. There's 3 weeks left in this term, 3 to 4 weeks left. And there are some children who have not reported to Form 1 today, right? Yeah. For many reasons. One, the biggest one, is for lack of fees.
Yeah.
Probably the second one also is, after that, is a placement problem, that they've not been placed in wherever. And there's not been adequate or proper placement that makes sense for them and also the school. Shouldn't it be that it should be streamlined in such a manner that whether you have the fees or not, as a child in this country, you should be able to go to school? And that you should get an education commensurate to anybody else in the country, doesn't matter what school they are going to.
That's why I've said we need to streamline how we use the funds that go to education. Today we have a national government bursary fund. We have county government bursary fund.
Yes.
We have member of parliament bursary fund. We
CDF.
have ward rep has a bursary fund. These monies, because they are scattered, they're actually used for political function optimization.
Yep.
We need to put all these funds into a basket.
One.
Where we can then be able to identify the children who need and pay their full fees, rather than a member of parliament calling 100 children in the constituency and saying, I have to spread money to be popular everywhere, giving everyone 2,000-3,000 shillings. At the end of it, the child who didn't have school fees still does not have fees. The child who had school fees has just more pocket money to go and now buy contrabands and bring them to school. So we have misused that fund, and it is a lot of money. If we put it together, it will get a lot of children who are unable to go to school because of fees into school.
So it should be centralized. We've had this conversation here that everybody, is the king of their own fund and seeks popularity through that.
Yeah.
If we consolidate these funds, we will not be having the problems
and administered transparently, so that people who are able to pay are not benefiting from it, and it is targeting children who can't pay. Because also just telling principals that every child will come to school regardless of whether they pay fees is defeatist. That principal needs to feed children in school, needs to pay workers who clean the toilets, needs to do their services the principal has to provide in school, and they cost money. So telling the principal, let the children be in school without telling them how they will provide the services they ought to provide does not really help, does not solve the problem.
Dr. There are those who argue that part of the reason why this process was devolved is because these local politicians know and understand those who are most in need. And the argument is that if you have this huge body at the national level, unless you're saying there'll be this huge body, but its function will be cascaded to the 47 counties. So is that what you're saying?
In 1991, I was in Form 3.
1991?
Yes. I benefited from a presidential bursary. There was a structure that identified people who needed it up to the village level, and I was able to benefit. Today you have given an MCA money, and this MCA must satisfy his supporters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He will play politics with the money.
So a politician naturally optimizes a political support function. And that is based on who supports me and what are their needs, so that they also meet my needs. It's not based on who really needs.
Yeah.
A few of them are going for the children who need. A few. I don't want to blame everyone. A few of the politicians are doing the right thing. They are identifying children who need and paying fees for them. Majority of them are using that fund
We
as a
had a
political
case the other
fund.
day when five MCAs are in the docks because they basically mishandle funds that were supposed to be going towards children's fees. This is a real situation that we are
In
dealing with
account.
today.
By the way,
Today.
I subscribe to what you're saying because not too long ago I was a chairman of the board of a school in my back home. Okay. And, yes. And we had a fees arrears problem. And you know, it was resolved. I got a new head teacher who understood how this system works. And she actually got the students who had not been able to pay an fees arrears to apply to the county bursary fund. And literally all of them got funded.
Yeah.
So suddenly, that huge backlog of fees suddenly started seeming right. The money was always there.
The money, the government has put enough money in education to educate children in this country through school. That money is being misallocated.
Appropriated.
It's being misallocated and put on things that may not necessarily contribute to ensuring that every child gets a good education. And that is where we need to focus our energies. In terms of funding, that is where energies need to be focused. To get the resources already put in the sector utilized properly and targeted to the children who need. And when I talk about targeting, it's actually the whole system from primary to university. I don't understand, for example, why someone should take a child to, I don't want to name any private school, but there are private schools, you know, pay 300,000 per term for this child in primary school. For this child to qualify to go to a national school and receive government capitation for fees that is now much less, much less. These parents should just be able to pay the full fees.
with
Because what they're required to pay would be much less.
It is much less. What they were required to pay in secondary school, it's much less than what they've been paying in a primary school. They should be able to continue to pay. Some of them even have employer schemes that pay those fees. They should be allowed to pay. And let this capitation come to schools to support children who can't raise fees.
But then the government treats all its children like they're all its children, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So capitation right now is at 22,240 per child per year in secondary school, whether you're in day school or in boarding school. You said that we have some inequality in how or even inequity in how this money then is being used in supporting the school subsector. How many, if we look at sub-county, county, extra county and national schools, we obviously know that nationally we have fewer children in the national schools.
Less than 3%.
Less than 3% of the children who are in secondary schools are in national schools. This is about what? Out of 4 million, about less than 3%. So we can look at the numbers. So more children in this country are in the sub-county schools, are in the county schools. Which means that out with 22,240 per child per year, the sub-county and county schools are receiving more money than the national schools are receiving.
On average, when you say they're receiving more money, in total, yes. But per school, in terms of being able to make a difference in that school, no. Because an average sub-county school has less than 400 learners.
Right.
Some have even 200.
Right.
So that is very little money when it reaches the school. And there is very little that the school principal can do with it in terms of developing the school. So I feel that we need to target in the next few years, create a program to upgrade those schools so that, one, we can distribute learners more equitably, because many of these big schools are super congested. Children sleep in dormitories like stacks
Triple
of
decker.
violating totally the guidelines given by the ministry on school safety and learner safety in those dormitories, because everyone wants their child to go there. And this everyone who is pushing their child there is not stupid. They know that is where learning is happening.
Yeah.
And so they want their child to benefit.
Their child stands a better chance
by going to those schools. If we can make learning to happen in these other smaller schools, give them the means to make learning happen, then we will ease pressure on the few bigger schools. And we will now start to improve overall quality of education in the country. Because recall that in the last KCSE results, we had 46,000 E's. Yeah?
Yep.
If you score an E in Form 4, all the courses you qualify to do after that are courses that someone from class 8 has qualified to do.
Yeah.
Why did you have to spend 4 years in secondary school to go and do the artisan course that someone who has just left class 8 will be doing?
So how do you distribute the resources? Because I'm just trying to look at your proposal, which sounds solid. How can it best be implemented? So there's capitation. Would you propose that increase the capitation of children who are in sub-county and county schools, instead of just saying average uniform 22,000 per child? If you're in sub-county school, you get more? Or is it an extra budgetary allocation specific for infrastructure development and improvement in the sub-county and county schools?
We need to say, first we need to have an upgrading program that is separately funded, that will target putting up libraries, laboratories, and other facilities in those sub-county schools. That should be separately funded. The same way we have funded the national schools upgrading. That needs to be separately funded. Then
some sort of like an RRI over the next 5 years. We
are going to do this to upgrade all our sub-county schools. And one other thing that needs to be done in upgrading those sub-county schools is, first of all, stopping any establishment of new ones.
Okay.
Because there's something that people have tried to ask me to sit on boards to help set up some new secondary schools back home, and I've refused. Because when you set up a new secondary school in this sub-county, all that you have asked TSC to do is to go to one of the schools there and pick one of the best performing teachers and make them head of this one. Create a shortage of that teacher where they have left. And this one will only have this one teacher. So the learners here have only one teacher. The learners where these other teachers come from, let us expand the capacity of the schools that are there so that they accommodate more children. We consolidate the teachers together. Rather than spreading teachers thin, we consolidate them together and we enable learning to happen. I think also that we need to then say, out of this capitation, a certain percentage, say 30% of capitation, will be given as a flat, 30 or 50% will be given as a flat amount for every school. We are giving every school 5 million, it will be 5 million for every school. And then after that, the rest of the capitation will be will be on the basis of numbers of students. So that even that school with 100 students that just started the other day has some significant amount with which to build its facilities.
You know, it sounds like you're asking for an equalization fund.
That's it.
Yes.
In a way, yes, because our commitment to the Kenyan child is that we will give them an equal chance to get a quality education. Now, when exams come out and you distribute children, knowing that the institutions where you are sending them are not anywhere near equal, are we still keeping our promise to the children?
So then, from where you sit, is it absolutely possible then to have it, I mean, just thinking it through, to have a cross-border system so that every child getting into school has a fair shake at the same result? So that you're not having a situation whereby there are different elements or factors that are going to affect the outcome. across board, it doesn't matter where you go to school, in Nairobi, in Yamira, in Garissa, it doesn't matter where you go to school, that the system has been so set up that everybody has access to the same in terms of factors and elements for this education?
Yeah, it is possible if first of all TSC ensured that the distribution of teachers is equitable, that is not biased in favor of the bigger schools. That is one. Two, if we ensured that we are upgrading facilities in the smaller schools to make them as good. Three, if we made sure that the capitation resources that we are giving those schools is equitable and fair. Four, if we also applied our brains more in terms of determining who gets the funds in terms of bursaries and other funds that the government is giving to ensure that there is proper targeting. I think let us give everyone this much is a lazy approach. To me, it's a bit, it's an easier way, but it's a lazy one, because in the end, there isn't targeting to those of the children who actually need to benefit from all these public programs. And I know that there could be actors outside of government willing to put resources in supporting improvement in quality education. I know there are development partners that have been giving Kenya money to try and support improvement in quality education, especially in secondary school. But there are very many practical decisions that need to be reasoned out before being made. And if that happens, it is very possible that we can make it. We can make the learners' abilities and effort to be the only determinants of the differences in their results.
Dr. Manyasa, we're going to take a quick break and then come back and have a conclusion of this conversation with you. Just to say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home who've been watching us since the top of the hour. The conversations continue on SpiceFM and on YouTube and Facebook, where we're live streaming the show 2 minutes to 9.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So, you okay, Siti, ask the final question. Let me know.
Do you think education should be devolved?
No. What needs to be devolved is infrastructure. In my view, I think that we need to devolve infrastructure development, because if you are in Busia and the wind blows the roof of your classroom off, it is easier for you as a school principal to go to the county and tell the county boss, you see, there is no roof on my classrooms and children need to be in that school. It is easier to get attention, because also the governor is being held accountable by the people there for repairing that roof. If he doesn't repair, there is a political cost.
So
it is much harder to start writing to Jogo House to say, you know, my roof has been blown off, and then some of the people receiving the letter in Jogo House don't even know where your school is.
Have no clue where Sigalame School is.
I went to Sigalame, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, Chief Leonard Orua says hello.
Thank you.
He's a former classmate of yours.
Thank you. Thank you.